Good evening, all.
Shrey, I think we can start.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session on biomedical engineering. I would like to start with the video to introduce Iris to you.
Are you ready for the ride of your life? Well, it all begins right here. Your first step is picking a category you can enter by yourself or with a partner. If you are in 5th to 8th standard, you will be in junior category. If you are in 9th to 12th, you are in senior category and have a chance of making it all the way to ICEF. Now that you know which category you are in, it is time to find out which subject your project comes under.
At IRIS, you have a variety of 21 subject categories to choose from, ensuring that your project has a category that fits. The categories include animal sciences, behavioral and social sciences, biochemistry, biomedical and health sciences, biomedical engineering, cellular and molecular biology, chemistry, computational biology and bioinformatics, earth and environmental sciences, embedded systems, energy, sustainable materials and design, engineering mechanics, environmental engineering, material sciences, mathematics, microbiology, physics and astronomy, plant sciences, robotics and intelligent machines, system software, and transitional medical sciences.
A display shows the public and the judges what you have done. You're looking to attract and inform visitors about your project. To make it easy for people to access your results by creating a clear, attractive and concise display. The focus should be the work. Take a look at this reference.
Your title should be simple and must accurately represent your research.
Take photographs or videos of important parts or phases of your experiment to use in your display.
Prepare a miniature of your model in case your prototype is too large to be carried along.
Make sure your display is logically presented and easy to read.
Use neat, colorful headings, charts, and graphs to present your project. Pay special attention to labeling.
Be sure to adhere to the size limitations and safety rules when preparing your display.
The IRIS journey begins with registration on the website www.irisnationalfair.org with submission of online synopsis and supporting documents. These entries are prejudged by the IRIS Scientific Review Committee, and shortlisted projects are sent an email inviting them to participate in the IRIS National Science Fair. Winners of the IRIS National Science Fair qualify for an intensive series of mentoring camps and get the opportunity to represent India at platforms such as the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair in the United States of America. ICEF is the world's largest pre-college STEM competition. Over 265 Indian students have won over 160 awards at this competition, competing with over 6 million high school students from all over the world each year. Not only are you getting a chance to make your nation proud, but if you're lucky, you could join the 31 Indian students who have had minor planets named after them.
So guys, please don't miss this opportunity.
It's your turn now.
If you're innovative and you really want to bring about a change in the world, I think IRIS is the right place for you.
You enjoy science and math and computer science and so on. So it gives you a platform to show what you've done, and you have a chance to go to ISEF too.
If science actually kindles your curiosity and you're really passionate about it, IRIS provides you the largest platform in India to show your talent.
Applying to IRIS, not only get to have a great experience, you meet great people. And great mentors are that. They're not judges. They're not judging you. They're mentoring you. They're teaching you. They make you learn new things.
In the end, it's not about winning or losing. It's about experience. And Iris National Fair guarantees great experience.
Don't tell people what your dreams are. Show what your dreams are through Iris.
It's once in a lifetime experience.
It's your turn.
It's your turn. It's your turn.
It's your turn.
It's your turn.
It's your turn.
It's your turn.
Thank you so much, everyone. Now, without wasting any time, I would like to introduce you to today's expert. We have Dr. Pillai, Dr. Jonathan D. Pillai. Dr. Pillai works for Center for Design as Assistant Professor in Translational Health Science and Technology Institute, Faridabad. He has completed his Doctor of Philosophy in Biomedical Engineering from Ohio State University, Columbus, and received Stanford India Biodesign Fellowship in Medical Devices Innovation from Stanford University, USA, and AIIMS, New Delhi. Dr. Pillai has experience in applications of nanotechnology, biomaterials for novel drug delivery systems, medical technology innovation for low resource setting. A very warm welcome to Dr. Pillai. You may now introduce your session, sir.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here to IRIS, and it's very nice to see the interest, especially among younger innovators and people. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to biomedical engineering. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Is that visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Excellent. Welcome everyone to the webinar. This is the first time I'm speaking to a school audience. Normally, I teach PhD students and master's level students. So hopefully, I've kept this simple enough for everyone to be able to get at least a feel for what biomedical engineering is. I'm not going to speak a whole lot about the field, even though it's a very vast field, and I can happily talk about it for a couple of hours. But my goal here today is to give you a high-level introduction to what the field is, and perhaps give you some ideas or pointers about how you can go about picking a project and creating something that is of value to society and also of interest to you. I'm hoping we don't have a Zoom bombing going on here. Okay, so the overview of my presentation is just quite short. We're going to talk about what biomedical engineering is at a high level, some key subcategories that have been identified by the folks at IRIS. And I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes talking about how to choose projects in biomedical engineering, because that, I believe, is half the battle won. If you can choose problems that are interesting enough, but also doable enough, and then how to build and test for success. So let's get into it. So biomedical engineering is, in a nutshell, the application of all of both science and engineering principles and design concepts to medicine for the purpose of enhancing human health. And that can mean anything from diagnosis, monitoring, therapy, rehabilitation. Any of those fall under the category of biomedical engineering. So if you have a technology or a product that helps people live better lives or survive and recuperate from a disease, then that is a contribution of biomedical engineering. Let us understand what it is not. So biomedical engineering does not involve the use of drugs. or medicines per se in a direct format. So drug therapies, when they are directly administered to patients, like if you're taking a tablet, you're taking an injection, that is not part of biomedical engineering. But anytime a drug is delivered in a special way, that still can be a part of biomedical engineering, which actually is my specialization, that of drug delivery systems. So for instance, if you have asthma, if any of you has asthma and have used an inhaler, a dry powder inhaler, then the dry powder inhaler and the powder that goes into it are both a part of things that biomedical engineers have designed and developed. The drug that goes into your body may not be part of biomedical engineering, but the syringe that is used to deliver the drug, that's part of biomedical engineering. I am wearing glasses right now. My glasses are a medical device technically, because they are a technology that are helping me see what is on my screen and around in the world. So anything that involves technology but does not involve the direct use of drugs, that is considered biomedical engineering. So let's get more into that. If you have questions on that, we can talk about it later. It's mission critical for the delivery of even basic healthcare. So it covers everything from a simple clinical thermometer. Now, thermometers were not invented by biomedical engineers, but a clinical thermometer, the one that you use for getting the temperature of your body, that's a biomedical device. Sophisticated MRI machines. Now we have surgical robots. All of those are examples of biomedical engineering. And it's a very highly multidisciplinary field. So it utilizes physics, chemistry, obviously biology, math, almost all branches of engineering that I can think of, and medicine. So obviously you can't be an expert at everything. There is no human being that's capable of doing that, which is why biomedical engineering is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. You have to have teams of people working on problems from many different angles. And that's how we solve the problem that human beings have in health. And if you're successful at doing this, then you are able to save lives and restore health across multiple levels. If you are able to diagnose disease early, for instance, you're able to save lives. If you are able to build prosthetics, you're able to improve and enhance the life of someone who is disabled. If you are able to provide critical care, if you've seen or heard of ICU units right now with the COVID pandemic, you see a lot of people requiring ICU care. So we talk about ventilators, we talk about cardiac monitors, we talk about stroke and neurology. So all of that is made possible by the tools that biomedical engineering provides. We are now able to save babies a lot more than we were only 20 or 25 years ago. So we are now able to save babies that are born way too early, and also some babies that are very sick. So India had a very bad track record of babies dying because they could not be provided enough care, because they're so vulnerable and can lose their life so easily. The elderly have problems that are long term. They have blood pressure, some of them have kidney failure, some of them need their hearts don't beat properly at the right timing. So we have cardiac pacemakers. In surgery, you have anesthesia, which the delivery of anesthesia is a very critical and important task that's made surgery possible. And we have heart-lung machines that allow open heart surgeries. We have transplants of organs, which are enabled by surgery. But we also have things like laparoscopy and different surgeries like that, which are all tools that doctors use. All these tools are designed and developed by biomedical engineers. And now the latest and some of the best research in biomedical engineering is happening in the field of tissue engineering and regenerative medicine, where we are now trying to build brand new organs from scratch so that we can replace organs or tissue that is faulty or that has been damaged or broken by for some reason. So that's in a nutshell what biomedical engineering is. For the purpose of this presentation, we are going to talk about a few key subcategories, and they're listed here. I'm not going to go into them here in detail because I have a slide for pretty much each one of these. So let us get into what these key subcategories are, right? So the first one I want to talk about is biomechanics. And biomechanics is where my journey as a biomedical engineer started. I actually started my studies as a mechanical engineer. So I studied, for those of you who are in grade 10 or above, you must have heard of Newton's laws of forces, of statics, force equals mass times acceleration, all of that. And I was a mechanical engineer all the way till my master's. And just out of curiosity, I took one course on biomedical engineering. And that made me fascinated with biomedical engineering and allowed me to be able to pursue that for my PhD. So these are some examples of what biomechanics are. It's simply the study of motion, forces, deformation and flow within the body, and also the devices then that interact with the body. So all our joints and any place of our body that interacts with either other people or the earth, all of those are subject to the forces that we all experience. We at least experience gravity when we are playing, when we are moving, when we are walking, when we are participating in sport. All of these, there are multiple forces that are in play. And so biomechanics is simply a study of these forces and how these forces then in turn, Newton said every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So all these forces in turn have a reaction on our body. And so biomechanics figures out what is the effect of these forces, and when those forces exceed a certain level, what happens. Or particularly in sport, can we utilize these forces to improve our performance? Can we improve our technique for specific sports that are very skill oriented, like for instance the hammer throw or the javelin or the shot put? These are all very technical sports that depend on the science of biomechanics to give you very high performance. Even simple things like soccer. There's a picture here of an analysis done on the bottom of somebody carrying a backpack. So all of you who are carrying backpacks to school, how does the backpack's weight influence your body, and what forces does it put on your body? There's a lot of talk going on now about students having to carry really big and heavy backpacks, and that's not good for our backs and also to a certain extent for our knees. So all of that can be analyzed, and then we can develop solutions that help us improve certain things or prevent injury from excessive forces from happening. Some of you may have seen this movie called Ice Princess. It's a Disney movie. You can watch it, and there are clips of it on YouTube. But it's basically the story of a girl who does a science project, just like you guys are wanting to do, about the mechanics of ice skating, figure skating. And that's, again, a very technical sport that uses the forces of Newton to enhance performance. So I'd just like to encourage you, if you have not seen the movie, it's a nice movie to watch, but it's also useful to see how biomechanics is used in real life to improve performance, especially in athletics and sport. So when we talk about biomechanics, what are its applications? You can have assistive technology for disabled and the elderly. So you can help, for instance, somebody walk better. So prosthesis roughly comes under the broad field of biomechanics. If you've ever seen somebody with a prosthetic leg or a prosthetic hand, you need to understand biomechanics in order to develop one of those. But it also is necessary to understand the area of gait analysis. So when, for instance, people have joints that have worn out, the elderly, or because of an accident or a sports injury, your gait changes, the way you walk, the way you are able to run or not able to run, the way you climb stairs or get downstairs. These are all part of our gait. If you are a worker who carries heavy equipment, then the way you lift things becomes very difficult if you don't have good gait and strength on your body. So, sorry. So that's another good application of biomechanics. And then the transport of your blood in different organs, that is fluid mechanics. It's part of biomechanics. And that is also very important for developing things that we use for cardiology, for instance. So if your heart is not functioning properly and you want to design, let's say, an artificial heart, it's very important for me to understand how the blood flows through the whole body, and then be able to figure out a way to design something that replicates the human heart. So those are some of the applications. From your perspective, for the purpose of this competition, you can do, there's a lot of interesting work that you can do even at the student level on very simple things like gait analysis, using simple tools like an iPhone. I don't know how many of you know that an iPhone has accelerometers, which are devices that are used to track motion. So by using accelerometers, if you do Google search, you'll find a bunch of projects online where people have used iPhone accelerometers to track motion, to track gait. My iPhone is able to tell me how many steps I have walked. It is able to do a number of different things. So that's an interesting one. But now there are also very nice projects where people are trying to put sensors. We'll talk about sensors in a little while, and try and observe or measure forces at different parts of your body. So for instance, you are participating in Taekwondo. I had a picture of 2 kids who are playing Taekwondo, and you want to measure how hard your kick is or your punch is. There are ways of integrating sensors into boxing gloves or whatever, and being able to measure those forces. Blood flow is something that may be difficult to measure, but you can always replicate blood flow by just pumping simple fluids through a system and developing simple pumps that can be utilized and improved on later on for enhancing flow of blood in certain situations. So just some ideas on what you can do with biomechanics. And next we come to the field of biomedical devices. So this is something that I'm quite passionate about. But if you look in any hospital, particularly in an intensive care unit, which I have a picture of here, it is the study and construction of any apparatus of that uses any technology to measure, prevent, or treat diseases. So these are equipment or tools, and those are two slightly different things, that can be used to treat or monitor disease, or even to diagnose a disease, to find out what is wrong in the body. So in this picture on the left, there's a picture of a ventilator. This patient is pretty seriously ill, and this nurse is looking at how he is breathing. You will see, I don't know if you can see my pointer here, but you'll see some medication that is going into the patient. So we are tracking how this patient is getting medication. You see a heart rate, you see a respiratory rate, you see a pulse, you see blood pressure being monitored. So all of these are biomedical devices. On the right hand side here is a is a picture of a ventilator that a friend of mine is developing at the moment in Bangalore. And we are in the process of trying to test this out and see if this works. On the bottom left here is a device that I have been able to invent as part of a team, which takes with a special needle that is able to take a small part of your, a very tiny piece of your internal organs to test to see if people have cancer or they have a serious illness. So this is the process of what we call biopsy, something that is able to figure out what your tissue or what your organ actually looks like from the inside by taking a tiny piece of it and then looking at it under the microscope. So these are just a few examples of biomedical devices. The list of biomedical devices is literally would run into thousands. Everything that we use that is a product or a technology that can be used to help fix, correct, diagnose, or treat a disease, that is a medical device, a biomedical device. So like I said, my glasses right now are a biomedical device because the use of these glasses is fixing the problem I have with my eye of not being able to focus right. There are examples that we'll talk about later that are also biomedical devices. The BP machine or the pulse oximeter that measures the oxygen in your blood that is useful then to control a ventilator or to give doctors insight whether you are breathing properly and you have enough oxygen in your body. All of those are biomedical devices. And so the field is pretty vast. You can pick whatever you like. You can make devices that are very simple. They don't have to be very complicated. For example, I talk about assistive technology. Assistive technology is anything that helps somebody who's disabled or better abled, as we call them, to be able to function more normally. So things that help blind people or deaf people or people with mobility issues, people who can't walk or who can't get up from their beds or have a partial paralysis of one limb, one hand, one leg, anything that helps them move better or work better. For example, if somebody cannot type because they have arthritis and their fingers are stiff, they cannot bend their fingers very well. Typing with a keyboard is going to be difficult, or using a mouse on a computer is going to be difficult. So assistive technologies are those kind of products that help with people there. We talk about neonatal and infant care. Now, when we talk about babies, you'll think about what do babies, how can I as a student help take care of babies? But babies need a lot of simple things that you can help with. Simply finding a way to keep a baby warm is actually a pretty big problem that most people don't realize how serious it is. Babies cannot control their own temperature, their body temperature, and so they get very hot or very cold very quickly. And especially very tiny babies have a big problem in staying warm or cold. So we would like to have a way of keeping babies at a constant temperature, and that would allow them a way of surviving sometimes. So imagine if there's a very tiny baby that's born in the middle of the desert of Rajasthan and is very hot. And if you can come up with a solution to cool down that baby when they're very hot, or a baby that's born in Leh or Ladakh and is very cold, and you find a way to keep that baby warm within the optimal temperature of the human body, which is about 96 degrees Fahrenheit, that would be a neat project to do. Home diagnostics, measuring simple things like there are now kits that you can buy online to measure oxygen, to measure temperature. All of those can be simple things that you can work on, or if you are able to find a lab or a biomedical expert to work, you can work on more difficult problems like diagnosing different types of diseases, right? So these are all examples of biomedical devices. Again, the list is very long. I cannot go through all of them, but just to give you a flavor for what is possible here. Now, biomedical sensors and implants are another very interesting field. Here, we actually use some external energy source usually, or we use the energy that is generated within a body to pick up a signal or some sort of image from the body. And then we use that to find out more information about the human body or its structures or its conditions that are affecting the normal functioning of the body. So on the left here, you may have seen pictures of MRIs, MRI scans in movies or something of that sort. On the left there, that tunnel-like thing on the left of your screen is an MRI machine that uses a very powerful magnet to generate a magnetic field, which is completely harmless to the body, but it excites the water molecules in the body in a particular way, and it aligns them in a particular way. And when we then excite these water molecules inside our body, they behave in a way that gives off a certain energy when we probe them with radio waves. And in return, we can then reconstruct what is inside, where the water was inside the body, and develop images like the kind you see on the top. Here is a picture of the different ways in which you can use sensors. So there are sensors that pick up brain waves inside your brain. So your brain is constantly giving out waves that tell different parts of your body what to do. So there is something called an electroencephalogram, or EEG, which picks up brain waves. Similarly, everybody has seen in movies, I'm sure you've seen the heart monitor, right? So you've seen what a pulse looks like. And obviously, when you have a flat line on that, the person is no longer there. So you can, there are ways of picking up the heart rate of people, right? And then you can pick up motion. If your muscles, when they contract to move any part of your body, they give off some energy that we can pick up. So there are sensors that pick those up. There are sensors that pick up physical activity. Like my iPhone has got the accelerometer, so it picks up any motion when I am holding or carrying it. And then there are sensors that pick up that are completely outside your body and will still be able to detect different things that are going on inside your body, right? So on the right corner here, I have a picture of a pulse oximeter. This is by a company called Masimo that makes some of the best pulse oximeters in the world. That uses infrared light to pick up the oxygen inside your capillaries in your fingertips, and that gives us an idea of how much, whether you have sufficient oxygen or not. And again, there are a number of different things you can do with biomedical sensors and imaging. There is a lot of electronics that goes into this, but you can build simple circuits that measure different things. So a clinical thermometer that is used to pick up temperature is a sensor. It's a temperature sensor, right? There are sound sensors, there are heat sensors, there are motion sensors, there are oxygen sensors, there are heart rate sensors. So a number of different things that you can explore and look at as options for you to pick and choose. Activity monitoring is becoming very important now. If you have heard of things like the Apple Watch or the Fitbit, these are wearable devices. I have a wearable device on my hand that measures my walking and my heart rate, actually. So there are a number of things like these that are now coming into the market. Imaging, you may not have access to an MRI machine, but the data from an MRI machine is available online if you're a student, but this may not be valid for the younger students, but if you are an older student who knows how to program and code in C or MATLAB, some of these images data is available, or you can simply take photographs on your phone and do some image processing on those. So that is part of the field of biomedical imaging and sensors. Again, I'm just giving you a brief outline. There is lots more to study and do in this field. And then we come to the more exotic varieties of biomedical engineering, which is cell and tissue engineering. And I have clubbed this together with biomaterials and regenerative medicine because I think they go together. So here what we are trying to do is basically replicate either the function of a cell, which is very critical, or the function of a whole tissue, or the function of a whole organ. So there are lots of people who have single organ failure, like they have their kidneys have failed, or their liver has failed, and or their pancreas have failed, and therefore they have diabetes. And it would be wonderful if we can regenerate those organs. But to do that, let me tell you that the human body is an absolutely wonderful thing. And to replicate even the simplest thing, simplest function of a human body is actually, from an engineering point of view, extremely difficult and challenging. But nonetheless, we have done fantastically well over the last 100 or 150 years in doing a lot of things that were not possible before. So tissue engineering tries to take biomaterials, materials that are compatible with the human body, or at least with the cells of the human body, and then use them as a scaffold. A scaffold is simply a structure or a framework that is able to hold these cells together and then allow them to grow. And so you have these scaffolds that look like meshes or nets. If you look on the picture on your right hand side there, and then into that mesh or scaffold you can implant cells, and then you feed those cells with the right growth factors and reagents. And if you do this process right and take really good care of things, avoid contamination, avoid bacterial infection, then eventually you would be able to grow an organ, right? So on the left here, I have listed 4 different things that are necessary to develop a tissue or a structure. One, you need a biomaterial of some sort, and that depends on what kind of tissue you're trying to grow. You will need cells, which are again dependent on the specific cells of the organ or tissue you're trying to grow. There are very specific growth factors and reagents that are necessary to do these things. And then you need an environment to be able to grow them. So think about what happens when babies are born, right? We all stay in our mommy's tummy for 9 months, and that's a nice, safe, warm, wet place for us to grow and develop. And so the bioreactor is kind of an artificial womb. It helps cells to grow in a safe, sterile, clean environment, and allows things to grow as if it was growing inside a human body. So that's broadly the category of cell and tissue engineering and biomaterials and regenerative medicine. This requires a little bit of specialized equipment. I'm not sure how many of you would have access to these equipment, but if you have a biomedical research institute close to your home, you can go and talk to the professors there and see if you can do an internship or something of that sort that will give you access to some of these things and let you try some of these projects out. And then finally, this is the state of the art of biomedical engineering, the process of synthetic biology, where we are now talking about even more details than the tissue or the organ structure. We are talking about engineering individual cells. So we are talking about taking apart a cell, breaking it down into its subconstituents, maybe modifying its DNA, which is part of genetic engineering, creating new proteins, new structures within the cell, and then engineering these cells to do very specific things that you want them to do. So for instance, there is a particular type of cell that controls your white blood cells from going crazy. Whenever your white blood cells go crazy, that's a reason for cancer to develop, right? So even though the white blood cells are supposed to protect us, sometimes they can be bad for us. And so they will often need to be controlled. So in specific genetic illnesses that are inherited, people don't have the capacity to control their white blood cells. And so we can engineer these cells and put them back in your body, and then they help control proliferation. So there are many examples like that. I'm not an expert in synthetic biology, but if you want more information, I have a link here on the bottom. It's called the Earlham Institute of the United Kingdom. It has a bunch of articles on synthetic biology. You're welcome to come take a look at that. The image I've gotten is just a broad overview of how synthetic biology works. But there are a number of different things that you can do. You can replicate the circuit inside a cell to create something that helps us understand how cells work. So stuff like that can be something that may be of interest to you. All right, so I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes here trying to talk about how to pick a project. Now, obviously, the field is very vast, like I talked about. There are literally hundreds or thousands of problems that you can solve. So how do you do this, right? So the first thing to do is pick a good problem. And how do you go about picking a problem? You go about picking a problem by reading a lot of what people are finding hard to do. You ask your friends, teachers, neighbors, family for medical problems they have. And it need not be something too crazy, like you're not trying to build a brand new heart for someone or a brand new kidney for someone right now. But you can start with doing something simple. Like for instance, if you have elderly grandparents at home and they need assistance in walking or in reading or in listening, hearing aids, those are just simple things that you can start researching those technologies and see if there is something that you can do with that. The better thing to do is talk to doctors and nurses in your neighborhood. Obviously, this has become a little more difficult now with COVID, but if you have uncles or relatives who are in the medical profession, talk to them. If you have neighbors who are doctors or nurses, talk to them. And then find out what is it that they are struggling with, what is it that they have problems with on a day-to-day basis, what would they like. So simple things like good masks for COVID or face shields. Many people have done them now, so it may not be much of a problem anymore, but still there are improvements that you can make to simple things like these that are still part of biomedical engineering. So pick a problem which is real. And how do you know which is real? By talking to people that have the problem, right? And then also to a problem that can be solved with the resources you have available. So maybe at this level, it's not a good idea to try and build an MRI machine off the top of your head, but you can play with magnets and see whether you can, for example, develop a miniaturized MRI machine of some sort, or some imaging modality that takes advantage of things and technology that you have. Smartphones right now have a bunch of equipment that can be very useful. They have a very nice camera, they have a display, they have you can develop apps with smartphones that do a bunch of medical things. I have an app on my iPhone which lets me track my heart rate. So things like that can be interesting. Find out what category the problem falls under. We have talked about the key subcategories now. Brainstorm solutions. Brainstorming is simply the process of thinking of lots of different ideas and then trying to figure out which are the good ideas, narrow them down, narrow them down, narrow them down till you come to a solution which will work. and get some expert help when you're doing this. Ask your friends, ask your teachers, especially your science teachers, and then go and build something. Okay, building prototypes is very important in biomedical engineering, and try and test out what your solution will look like. And you can build a mock-up. It need not be a working prototype. It can just be a look-like prototype. This is what it's going to look like, or this is how it's going to work. It may not look very pretty, but it will actually work. And then test your idea and show it to the people who you identified, and get some feedback on it so that you know what whether it's working or not. So this is just a slide that I've used in my teaching previously. So there are now 3D printers that can help you make rapid prototypes. This is an example of a working prototype that somebody made. This wooden looking structure was a fall prevention device that was tested to make sure that when the elderly are sitting on a chair, they don't slip and fall while they do that. So there is a feedback session going on. Somebody's trying to test out the device and see whether it works. This is a foam model of a hip implant that somebody is trying to cut out. That's a model of the stomach. So we just used a balloon and a tube to make a model of how the stomach works. Here I am building a prototype for a device that was designed to stop internal bleeding. And then on the right hand side, we tested our biopsy device using some tissue that we got from the local market, and tested it to see whether it actually was, our needle was actually working or not. So do a lot of prototyping, test it out quickly and get some feedback, and that's the best way to design your project and to figure out if it's going to work. So with that, I'm going to close. That's my last slide. If you have any questions, now is I will be happy to take questions for about the next 20 minutes or so.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jonathan Pillai. That's certainly a very informative session. Thank you so much for taking time to put these together, take the students through this entire subject carry so patiently and in simple. So all of you are on the webinar as well as this is the time to ask your questions. If you would like to ask your questions, free to unmute your and raise your hand, we mute your mic, and you can question, or you the question chat of the call.
Participants, you may now unmute yourself and ask so your questions. Yes, Mr. Mathur, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, participants. Sir, is it possible that we generate face masks which are, say, made of silk, and then we statistically charge them to capture the coronavirus, which may have charges on the exterior proteins? Just an idea of, charge at a low cost and development of a new mask.
Yes, so that is a good example of a relevant problem, which is trying to protect from the transmission of coronavirus. It would fall under the category of biomaterials. So that is a good category of materials to work with. Silk is actually a wonderful biomaterial. I don't know how many of you know that. Silk is actually used quite extensively in biomedical engineering. It started being used for sutures, but now it's used for multiple things, including masks. So yes, certainly the concept of using charge to trap particles has been used before. The N95 masks that we see, the material of the N95 mask is special, and the reason it works and is so successful in trapping the virus is because it has a charge. So technically what you're suggesting is possible. You will have to work on how that actually works out and how to retain that charge for a long time, because retaining charge in silk can be done if you rub it. It attracts electrostatic electricity energy, but retaining it over a long period of time might be a bit of a problem. So you'll have to figure out how to do that.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it can be for limited time. Like if I'm going out shopping for half an hour, I could charge the mask, shop, and come back feeling quite safe, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mathur. I notice we have of our ISF participants, Nikhya and Siddharth. Nikhya and Siddharth, I'd like to invite you, please switch on your camera and everybody. The reason that we like to acknowledge is because these actually went to ISF representing in and brought laurels to the name. So Nikhya and Siddharth, if you're still on call, it'll be great to. Nikhya. Hi, Siddharth. Siddharth, would you, in 2 sentences, tell us about the device taken to Gati?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Siddharth Jain, and I'm an ISAF alum, and I was in 2019, and I have basically developed a shoe that analyzes gait patterns in a very cheap cost of only 600 rupees, and it requires only 30 minutes of testing time. The shoe uses spatial and temporal values recorded when the person is walking to generate a report which can be used by doctors to assess the patients. Yeah.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you. Nikhya, are you there? We'd like to see you too.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Yeah, hi. I'm an ISAF alum as well. I went in 2019, and my project is I basically created a risk assessment test for the risk of developing oral precancer and cancer. It's a very basic colorimetric test which judges the amount of a biomarker in your saliva, and it's completely non-invasive. It's very easy to store. It's very cheap, and yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Nikhya. We are very proud of both of you, yeah, and all the very best in the future as well. I'd like to take the conversation back to any of other participants who have questions. Thank you, Nikhya. Thank you, Siddharth. Any other questions? Dr. Jonathan, the explanations that you gave were so good that we have hardly any questions. And that is so wonderful. So, thank you once again. Participants, we have Dr. Jonathan while more. Have any questions? Please ask them now.
There was a participant, Vivekananda, who had their hand raised. You may unmute your microphone and ask sir your question. There's a comment coming in on the chat saying that the session was very informative. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Nikhya, Siddharth, any questions for our speaker?
I think the session was pretty informative, and I don't think I have any questions.
Great. Thank you, Siddharth.
No problem.
I don't have any questions either, but I'd just like to thank you for this presentation because I'm considering biomedical engineering in college. So this was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nikhya.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic field to pursue. And I actually wish I had somebody tell me about it when I was in college, because it is such a wonderful blend of different careers and different pathways. And it really uses a lot of pretty much everything that you will ever study in science and math and technology and design. But even if you're not from a scientific field, I'd like to encourage you. There are things that biomedical engineering does, which has got a very humanities side to it. So a lot of our surveys or questions or designs, there is this whole concept of human-centric design. So for instance, how do we make technology more useful and friendly to human beings? So for example, MRI machines, that tunnel kind of instrument that you saw, can be very intimidating for small children. Many small children are afraid of going into the MRI tunnel. And so there is this whole whole area of human factors engineering where people are trying to make biomedical equipment less scary, not so many blinking lights or alarms, or there's sometimes too much information overload. So even if you have a background in philosophy or psychology, or just like talking to people and have a way of connecting with people and understanding really what their problems are, to me, that's the crux of biomedical engineering, being able to understand what the problems are and being able to uncover them, figuring out which are the problems that are really painful for a lot of people, so that if you solve that one problem, then you are helping a lot of people at the same time. And I came back to India because that was my passion, and India certainly doesn't have any dearth of problems to solve. So hopefully this will excite and challenge some of you to seriously consider biomedical engineering. It does take a lot of effort. There's a lot to learn before you can actually get good at it. But like our alumni have demonstrated, even at the student level, you guys have done great work. Both of those were fantastic examples. And so good luck to you. Hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'd just like to say that any other information that you may require, participants, it is available on the IRIS National Fair website. So please feel free to visit us on the IRIS National Fair website. And thank you once again to Jonathan. Hope that we come as a student in the future. You have a bit of time. Thank you so much. Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.